Right, you are all at the mountain. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Buck Doyle, and I'm an alcoholic. How are y'all? You certainly look beautiful out there. It is a great honor, as always, to have the privilege of talking to my people in AA, and particularly a great honor to be asked to participate in this wonderful 5th annual conference, Oceanfront Conference. So I want to thank the committee and all of you for asking me. Now, this is Sunday, and I'm all dressed up in my preacher suit. But, in AA, just like it doesn't make any difference about holidays or anything, we got drunk on holidays. We got drunk on no holidays, if you were like me. And just because it's Sunday doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to give you a sermon, because we can speak of and I think we had a wonderful spiritual talk last night from Willard, and that was a Saturday night. It was good. Sunday, I haven't got that potential of expressing. I feel the things that Willard was getting over in my own heart, but I don't have the capacity to put it across like he does. And I call myself a pragmatic alcoholic, vis-a-vis a spiritual member of AA. However, that's a contradiction in terms, because there's really nothing more practical than this beautiful spiritual program. But I think what I'm trying to get over is that I talk more to the physical part. And when I have the privilege of speaking to a meeting, I always speak to two people, following the admonition in our preamble, where it says our primary purpose is to stay sober. And I identify that to mean to me, and that's what I'll be sharing with you. The fact that I'm supposed to do things in AA to keep me sober, that should be my thrust. And then, having accomplished this, try to help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety, and I identify those as the new people here. And by a new person, I mean the person that's here for their first meeting, or the first few meetings, maybe first few weeks, maybe first few years, maybe someone who's been around AA longer than I have been in AA, and are still trying to find their way in. And, anything I say will not be my opinions. I used to say that, but we had a wonderful guy who's no longer with us, Walter Davison, who changed that for me, like so many of you have changed my thoughts. And he said that what he had was convictions, and that's what I'll be sharing with you, my convictions. Those things that you people have convinced me of over these many years, and the things that I have heard from you in having attended over 8,000 of these meetings. So if you're new, see, I've been to 8,000 of these crazy meetings, and have heard at least 20 or 25,000 of you. By the way, that 8,000 number is an estimate, and not quite as accurate at McDonald's hamburgers, but they turn over every once in a while, and I've just recently turned over to 8,000, which I'll stay for a while, and then I'll pick it up. But from you all, I have picked up anything that I have here that you have convinced me of, these convictions. I have stolen them from so many people in this audience and in every audience, because that's how AA works. Sometimes in a word, sometimes in a talk, in a drunkalogue, sometimes in a comma, sometimes in a joke, like the one Willard told last night, a way of getting this beautiful message which you people have accomplished for me. And one of my favorite, because it has a meaning to me, is the story. Whenever I have a great group like this, a big group, I like to tell a story because it reminds me of this man that had a store here, a grocery store here in Virginia Beach, and he sold it, and he went out into the world and became one of the wealthiest men in the world, and he devoted his life to going around to conferences of some sort and telling people how he did it. And he was explaining, he said, what happened? I had this little grocery store here in Virginia Beach, and one of the big chains moved next door, and I couldn't make it. They brought me out for $10,000. He said, I immediately set out to Las Vegas, he said, where I got to the crap tables, and within an hour, he said, ladies and gentlemen, I'd lost every penny. He said, about that time I had to go to the men's room, and I found out you needed a dime. to get to the facilities, and I didn't have a dime, but I stood outside and I badgered people, and finally one person felt sorry for me and gave me a dime. I went in, I was about to put it in the slot when I noticed the door was open. I didn't have to use the dime, so I came out and I put the dime in the slot machine. I hit a jackpot. Another one. I got to the crap tables. I couldn't lose. Within a month, I'd made over $300,000, which I invested in oil wells and land. And now, as a result of that, I'm one of the wealthiest men in the world, and I go around talking, hoping to share this wonderful experience and find out and reward the person to share some of this great wealth with the person that gave me my opportunity. And way in the back of the room, this guy's up there. He said, "What's the matter with you back there?" He said, "I'm the guy you're looking for." "What do you mean?" He said, "I'm the guy that gave you that dime." He said, "I'm not looking for you. I'm looking for the guy that left the door open." So, I think when all of us finish up here at this conference, I think all of us that have had the privilege of speaking here have that in our mind, that we hope whatever we say, even if it doesn't do what you think it should do, that it'll at least leave the door open to this great life which has been so freely bestowed on all of us that have had, as Earl called it, old-timers, or, I just feel as new today as I did over 27 years ago when I first met you people. In fact, then I felt pretty dismal about the whole thing. We're told to share our experience, strength, and hope. And I think that's great, and that's the things that have kept me sober. Sometimes we will, whenever I use that we, it's the literary we, meaning me, will put down the fact that I'll say, "Well, just a bunch of drunkalogs last night." Well, that's after I've been to a couple meetings. I said, "Boy, all I'm hearing lately are drunkalogs, as if that's a terrible thing." Actually, thank God for you who have shared your drunkalogs with me, because that's what you've been told in that preamble, was to share your experience and what it was like and what happened, what it's like now. And then it also has something else there. It says our strength and hope, and that is the thing I mentioned before that I identify as those little nuggets of wisdom that I have garnered from you folks out here that have shown me this life and has helped to develop my own program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, to the new person, as you can look in this audience, we're mightily different in many ways and many attitudes, and we don't want you to become anything but who you are. And it is not our goal to change you. You were built and created by somebody who has a lot more talent for this than we have. But what I think we do here is to allow you to be that person by freeing you from the chemical alcohol, because that's what we're really talking about here. And to that new person, again, I'm saying this: if you're not drinking, for God's sake, keep doing it the way you're doing, because that is it. You're not drinking. The rest is your own project. So you're doing. And if anything I say seems to run counter to what your sponsor is saying, you listen to he or she and follow because they'll be sharing with you their experience, strength, and hope, and you listen to them. And then if you don't think it's any good, fire them and get another sponsor. But in the meantime, don't let me counteract any of it. But I will just be telling you these various things. Sometimes, you got to be careful of what you do in AA. When I'm up here talking, I don't want to oversell you, for instance. I'm a salesman by profession. And sometimes I've been out on a 12-step call, and to the new person, that's where we have the privilege of answering a call for somebody that says they want help. And this guy will be hugging the hopper, throwing up, and I'll be talking as always. And all of a sudden, he'll look up and say, "Hey, wait a minute, buddy, you're beginning to oversell me." And I don't want to do that. That's one of the mortal sins. Any salesman will tell you that's the mortal sin of salesmanship. To give you an example of that, one time I was out, called in the afternoon to call on this guy, and his daughter had called in, and she was quite desperate. And I had a new man with me, and he was carrying the bag, and so I take him along to show him how Buck Doyle does it. And we go over to Washington to this fanciest part of the town, and we go into this apartment where you step into the carpet, and it comes up to your knees, the thing. And original oil paintings hanging on the walls, evidence of great wealth all around. A lot of hand-carved furniture or something. Very dangerous for an alcoholic because, he'd fall and I could see splatters of blood on the wall, and that's what had upset the daughter. And while my assistant was quietening the daughter down, I went into the bedroom, and here ensconced in this great oaken bed with fluffy silk pillows behind his head was a man who appeared to me to be in his 60s, maybe about 65. And his face, what had scared his daughter, his face had this big hunk of dry blood over his eye. And it wouldn't have upset most of us because if you're like me, I've seen myself in a mirror like that in the morning. And the eye all stuck together. So I went in the adjoining bathroom and from a golden faucet into a very fancy bowl, I drew some water. And I go in and I'm bathing his face and I'm wondering, well, how can I get to this guy? And finally I had it and I said, well, sir, I want to tell you something. Apparently, booze hasn't cost you anything in the material way, as you seem to be the man that has everything. But, sir, you're not escaping the price. What do you mean? I said, well, alcohol is taking something away from you much more valuable than these treasures. It's depriving you of life. It's aging you way beyond your years. And he said, how old do you think I am? I said, well, by God, you look like you're 80. He said, I'm 83. So, you never know. And to prove, to show you how this thing is not restricted to any class or wealth. It goes right across the whole spectrum of life. Another time to point out the same thing that I want to avoid of this overselling. There's that one time I got this call, and this was next door. I was in getting some AA literature from our inner group, and I had a new man with me again, and he was carrying the bag for the day. And the guy said, Buck, can you take a 12-step call this afternoon? I said, sure. Where is he? He says, right next door. Well, we were in a very terrible neighborhood in those days. And I went up this 3-floor walk up with the plaster falling off of the walls, and I go into this dismal apartment, and sitting on this broken, green, greasy felt couch was the victim, and he was in one of those World War II. He wasn't ensconced in a great bed. He was in one of those World War II short coats, and I can still see him with a paper cup from People's Drugstore with vegetable soup in it, and he was shaking away, and there was one light bulb lighting this dismal room during the afternoon. Only shade on it was some fly specks. That was about the only shadow. And standing as a kid, some kids were playing over in all this filth and roaches in the corner, some little babies, and this woman was sort of standing in the shadows. And I said, sir, I'm not going to tell you of the evils of booze. I said, it's apparent all around you. I said, here you are, in a filthy apartment here, on that filthy sofa, shaking away with those poor children playing over there in the corner, and that poor woman standing here in the shadows. And out of the shadows came this voice, and she said, wait a minute, mister. This isn't his apartment. This is mine. I was just trying to help him out. So appearances can sometimes be deceiving. But one thing I want to compliment you on, if you're new, congratulations, because I've got good news for you, is that you have already accomplished the two most difficult parts of AA in my book. I'm convinced you have already. The rest of it should be blue sky for you, because the worst part is behind. Number one, you have asked for help. We assume that because you're here. We do not go out and beat the bushes or go out and evangelize or yank people up off of bar stools and drag them kicking and screaming in here. Although I have a friend of mine here from Manassas. Well, years ago we did just about that. Pete N. from Manassas. But we did that. But we don't do it. That's not our procedure. We work by attraction, not by promotion. And so we wait for you to call. That's the theory. But like any rule, particularly where it deals with human life, we always have exceptions to the rule. Now, for instance, you may be an exception to the rule. So if somebody dragged you off of a bar stool, kicking and screaming, and brought you in here, we apologize for it. But that simply means that we considered you a basket case. When we have that, we don't stand on these core principles, you know. And we don't, you know, you don't have to really mean you want help when you call us. Don't feel bad if you didn't. If you're really here under false colors, don't feel a bit funny about that, because I'll let you on a secret from many of my friends, most of the people I've talked to, very few of us really wanted help and say, okay, send the bums around here. I'll talk to anybody to shut you up. Well, that's asking for help with our book, you know. And each of us have our own method of operation, and all I have to do is, like when if the wife calls and says, well, I said, look, just get him to say he'll talk to me. Well, how can I do that? Well, just nag him until he tells you, I'll talk to anybody, and I'll count that as him wanting to see me. All I want to do is be in a position when he gets real nasty to say, look, buddy, I didn't ask to come here. You asked for me, and then let him take it out on her, you know. See? So that's the way I look at how to answer a 12-step call. If you're here to shoot angles, join the crowd. I think so. Very few of us. I don't know. There's so many varieties of people at AA that anything is possible. But, you know, I haven't yet in all those 8,000 heard anybody get up here and say, well, one morning I decided, you know, it'd be a terrific idea to join something. I think I'll join AA. You know, we join AA because something bad happened. Something nasty happened. Something terrible happened. Something terrifying happened. Something dangerous happened. We're in danger of losing something. We're hurting. We have a con job to do. Any variety of reasons. You know, we say in our preamble that the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. The only requirement. You know, our founders had that one requirement. I just think of all the other organizations we're familiar with. Knights of Columbus, the Masons, the American Legion, the Elks, the Moose, you name them. And all of them will have many requirements for membership. Books of bylaws and all. And we only have one desire to stop drinking. That's all. And yet you might say, well, wait a minute, he doesn't understand. I don't really have a desire to stop drinking. I'm not here for that. I'm here to keep the wife and kids from leaving. This was a light bulb came on, and I thought, hey, this is one they haven't heard. I'll tell them I'm going to the 3 A's. And we hope it works. We hope it works for you. Although I understand nowadays, that was years ago, nowadays they don't leave. You do. You know, that's a change, a little change in position papers. But, or you might say, he doesn't understand. I'm here because that crazy boss of mine told me that if I went here, I could save my job. Or that judge said, look, fella, I could put you out on the road gangs here in Virginia, patting moccasins on their head, cleaning weeds away, or you can go to the AA. And you said, well, sure, Judge, I'll go to the AA. And welcome. It's all okay. The important thing is that a great thing has happened to you. You have gotten to your first AA meeting, the fact that you're here. And that's it. You know, our founders in their wisdom knew this. They knew this when they made that one requirement for membership. And, you know, you might say, well, I better get out of here because I'm not calling. Hey, you notice they didn't have any requirement for attending AA meetings because they knew that part of the illness of alcoholism was a terrible desire to drink. Even sick, hurting, and everything else, oh, just one more. One more. That's all I want. One more. That's all. And then I'll be okay. For 5 minutes, you know. That's all I want. So they knew this. And so they put no requirement on attending AA meetings. These meetings belong to you just as much as to any of us. This is a fellowship. I found out from these people that a fellowship is different than an organization. Different than a club. A fellowship is an assembly of equals. Equals. We're all equal with you. Every one of us in this room are equal. I ain't saying, now what's that guy's got up there? Here's a man up there. Been sober over 27 years. In my 28th year. In my 28th year. As soon as January the 5th came, I was in my 28th year. I always jump, tell the truth, but I'm in my 28th year. Trying to catch up with Earl. But anyway, so we come in here and we're equals. Because I want to remember this fellowship, what it means by that being equal, is that although I'm further away from my last drunk than many in this room, and we're all different distances away from our last drunk, we're just as close as you to our next one. I want to remember that. One drink, and I'm on my way. You know, we say here in AA that the first drink gets you drunk. And we interpret that, depending on ourselves, and it's okay anyway, anybody interprets it. I'm not contradicting, but I figured I didn't like that statement. I said, why, in this so-called honest program, this is what I knew, why do they have to pull that kind of garbage? First drink gets you drunk. Why don't they come out and say what they mean? That what they really mean, if they were really honest, because I was very suspicious of them. I came here very reluctant and angle shooting, too. If they were really honest, they would admit that what they really mean is that if you don't take the first drink, you can't get the 13th or 14th. That's what they mean. That's what Buck Doyle said they meant. No. Now I know. They meant exactly what they said. The first drink gets you drunk. Now, the police wouldn't say it. If I took a drink today, the police wouldn't say that, hey, he's drunk. They give me a blood test, I'd have no blood alcohol level. Well, they say he's okay. And people outside of AA will say, by God, Buck's entitled to a drink. Over 27 years without a drink, that poor man. He's certainly entitled to one. They're going to be the first ones to scream shortly thereafter, but they would be the first to defend my right, you know. But I'd be drunk. I know that now. I know that because I have been attending so many meetings and have gotten to know so many people in AA. And I know what one drink would do. I know that it, although, you know, I have to think of my head up here as sort of a theater. We have a sort of a theater on our shoulders here. All of us have all kinds of stuff going in and out of there. So we don't want anybody else coming in looking at it. It's all going ahead, though. It's always thinking, and sort of over these years in AA, as far as the drinking end goes, I, like Willie says, I don't want you to get any idea I've turned saintly or anything. I'm just striving. But over the years, I've sort of been running up here a bunch of G-rated movies. Family consumption, okay. One drink, and they'd all become X-rated. Whole change of view. I'd have a whole change of mind. Number one, 2 weeks from now, I'd be quickly to tell you that, you know, I had a drink 2 weeks ago at 3:32, and it hadn't bothered me. Now, you know, right away there's something nutty going on that anybody would remember anything they did 3 weeks ago. I wouldn't remember anything important in my work or anything that long, but I would certainly remember the exact moment I had that drink that didn't do anything to me. And then I'd have another one. And it wouldn't do anything to me. And I'd tell people, I'd say, you know, I've had a drink now and then, and it doesn't bother me. When did you have your last one? Well, I had it. Oh, my gosh, it's been a week and 3 hours. And before very long, I would say those old slogans that I had when I was drinking. I had slogans. I think a lot of us have little slogans like eat, drink, and be merry, you know, tomorrow. And I had one that I quickly would recall, and I'd be taking this one that wouldn't bother me anymore, and I'd say to myself, well, you know, a bird can't fly on one wing, so, hey, bring another. And I'd have two, and it wouldn't bother me. Now I'm a social drinker. Now I realize that all this was okay for those people back there, but I'm different. I really had made a terrible mistake, and Now I will continue drinking, and of course, very quickly, I'd be in a horrible situation because I have seen this in those friends of mine in AA that we call our noble experimenters, who have gone above and beyond the call of duty and have gone out there and done it for us, and I'd be just like them because I must assume that everything that happens to a person who has a slip, who went back to drinking, all the terrible things, I must assume, will happen to me. I was talking to Ed C. yesterday, and I said, except I can't assume one thing. I can't assume that I'll be as fortunate as those wonderful people I know who have made it back. Because I happen to be one of that 50% that came in, and thanks to you people, have not had any problems as far as drinking. I haven't had a drink and a mood change drug, and I didn't come here wanting to be here, and I wasn't happy about the situation any more than you are, if you knew. But I thought I'd go along for the ride. Quiet them down. Get them settled. I could stop anyway anytime I wanted to. I'd done it once. And so I'd fool around with it. And so I decided when I got here just to follow it, because I always knew what people were going to say. I was so smart. I knew. Yeah, I knew everything. I got here. I'll tell you about the atom bomb. You catch me in a barroom, I was an expert on anything. And I knew, I always anticipated what people were going to say. And I figured, okay, going to AA, we're going to go to AA, right. And I'm going to go, and so this man who I didn't like, who was foisted on me as my sponsor, he said, we'll be going to these meetings 3 nights a week. And I said, well, I figured, well, okay, he's so nosy. What's all you need? I said, well, if we need 3 nights, let's go every night. I always like to overdo everything. I figured, well, that'll shut him up. He'll back off now. And it was kind of hard then to find, to get the meeting every night. We'd go to Manassas, to Vienna, to every place to get 7. But he went along with it. We went every night. My idea of this was this, that I wasn't going to drink. And I'd already set up the whole thing in my mind because I knew I didn't belong there. I had a real good job with Sperry Rand in Washington. I was a sales manager in charge of government sales for our product. I was making good money. I had a nice home and a family. And I knew that this was a great thing for people like my older brother should be in here who couldn't hold a job, but not for a man of dignity like me, But I'd go along with them just to shut them up at home and at work and every place, because everybody was yapping. The parish priest had gotten in on the act, so the best thing to do, shut him up, let him hear he's going to AA, and then quietly play along with them and do this for 6 weeks. Now, I figured 6 weeks wasn't a long time, but it wasn't a short time. It was sort of a fair time, Nobody could complain that. And go every night. And then drift away quietly and go back to normal drinking, where I'd never been anyway, but we're going to go back to it anyway. And we're going to go back to this normal drinking. And I knew what people would say, though. People would say, hey, why don't you go to AA? And I'd say, see what you know, I've been to AA. And, of course, what they were going to say, because I always knew what people were going to say, because I'd been listening to what they said to them, they were going, yes, but you never gave it a chance, Buck. And then I had them, see? I've been to more meetings than people that have been around that thing for years. That would shut them up. Then I could mind my own business, and they'd mind theirs for a change. But during that period, what happened was these wonderful people here, and this is what I suggest to you, a new person, is you stop drinking. I stopped. This wouldn't have worked if I hadn't stopped. And you go to these meetings, and these people will give you, as a gift, the one requirement for membership, and a desire to stop drinking. I was given that. I did not have it when I came here. Never believe that you can't help a person until they want help. I definitely didn't want help except help to get people off my back. I didn't want any help. And you can give people help because I came here, I did the most important thing, which is the bad news for the new person looking at this thing at the first shock of day. on Sunday morning, if this is your first meeting, is we're talking about total, terrible word, total abstinence from the chemical alcohol. Now, any mood-changing other drugs, throw them in, because for us, they're all, for some reason. If you're one of us, we don't know that you are, but you're going to find out only if you stop drinking. And if you're not one of us, that's going to be easy anyway. So why not do it? Why fight it? So just stop drinking, and come to a meeting. If you just stop drinking, you would stop the onrush of alcoholism if you have it, but you wouldn't find out or not whether you were an alcoholic. You'd feel better physically, but so would anybody. But you want to find out what you are, something about yourself. So you stop drinking and you come to meetings. Even if you don't, and particularly if you don't like them. Well, if you don't like them, there's something, that really means that you're hearing stuff that you shouldn't be hearing because it's going to mess up your drinking. They say here, we won't stop you drinking. But by God, if you try to drink, we're going to mess that part of it up. So you've already been messed up. If you'll know secretly in your secret heart that there is something you could and should look into, and it's going to make your drinking more miserable now than it's ever been. If you don't think that's possible, you'll find out it is. It can get worse. So you stop, and you come here, and you don't even have to listen to us. You don't have to listen to us. Just bring the body here without any alcohol in it. Just bring it here. And don't even listen if you don't want. And if you'll keep bringing it here every night for the next 6 weeks, one night during this time, they say your brain's going to get lonesome sitting at home, is going to come along with you. But you come here, and you don't have to, I know you don't have to listen, because sometimes I go to meetings every night, at least every night. I do that because I enjoy them. I'm not telling you that that's the only way to do it, but that's the way I do it. It's been great for Buck Doyle. I go every night, and of course I hear some speakers, maybe that don't seem to be hitting me. And I'll pass the time away, thinking of other things. Count the light bulbs here. You see how many, find out how many of these markings they have in the room, how many of them blocks. Get an estimate of the audience, And the speaker's up here, and I'm really being discourteous, because that speaker is sharing something with me. Sharing his strength and experience and hope with me. But I'm not listening to him, but I'm hearing him. Because your ears hear. An amazing thing, I was in computer work, and we have an electrical computer up here. Boy, IBM, Control Data, Sperry Rand, any of them would love to have the dumbest one in the room in their inventory, And and they say that this computer is so compact, yet it's picking up all kinds of messages. Everything, they say that every license tag that's ever crossed before your eyes has been recorded. State, number, color of it, all stacked up in a locked vault up in here. Thank God, because you wouldn't have room for anything but license tags. But, this was illustrated at that kidnapping out there on the West Coast where they had that busload of kids, and so they got the driver, and every once in a while you read that, they hypnotized him, and they went in that vault, and they pulled out the license tag of the kidnappers. He didn't even know he had looked at the number, and they had it. I've had the experience myself, one that always hits me is when I smell new mown hay. Reminds me when I was 8 years old, my family took me to a circus. Now, what happened? The mechanics of this was that at that circus, probably nearby, there was a field of new mown hay, and the odor was recorded up here. And years in this distant future, I get that, and it goes into there, and it starts making a lot of machines turning in there. Pops out a new mown hay. Circus when 8 years old. See, it's all in there. It's all set up. And it happens here in AA. Because that person is telling me something. And sometimes I'm talking up here. Or sometimes I have the privilege of talking, as I say, to a new person at their home. And I'll say something that's so brilliant. I'm startled by my own brilliance, And I have to keep from saying, there was an ad on TV a few years ago that reminded me of that. I have to keep, after I say it, I'll be talking up here and I have to stop and say, almost saying, I didn't know that. And that great thought or that great idea or that great concept was given me by somebody who I didn't even have the courtesy to be listening to. But by God, I was at their meeting. I was a spear carrier here. Thank God we have spear carriers. Thank God we have audiences, to keep us sober, because we wouldn't have anybody to talk to, if we wouldn't. But I was doing my part, but I should have been listening too. But I wasn't listening, but I was hearing. So that's one of the tricks of the meetings. That's one of the tricks of the meeting. That's why we say, stop drinking and come to meetings. We tie those right together. Because as I say, stopping drinking would stop the onslaught of the disease. But we want you to be who you really are. We want you to enjoy your life. We want to show you a way to have a lot of fun, a lot of excitement, and a lot of adventure on this trip. Because I'm convinced we know. I've heard Big Mike up in Arlington say this, that unless a person finds here, unless you, the new person, finds here, and you've got to give us a chance to help you to find it by coming to these meetings and not drinking, but unless you find 1% more pleasure and joy in life than you hoped to find out of the bottle. Not that you got out of the bottle, because if you got out of the bottle, you wouldn't be here. But, the anticipation, this time it's going to be different. Just going to have a few to get an edge on tonight. This time I'm not going to get drunk. This time it's going to be different. We're going to have some fun. That hope continually spread up never happens. But unless you find as much excitement, as much joy, as much adventure. In fact, I think what I have found in AA are the things that I probably were looking for in the bottle, but never found. That the bottle promised me. That for years when I first started, I did have fun with booze. I had a lot of happy times with booze. I'd be a liar if I got up here and said not. But when my filter busted and everything started getting bad, I didn't know it. The fact that we had it at one time. Some people from the day they drink, they have problems. Each of us are different. Some of us go for years and had a lot of excitement. Oh, yeah. I've had this friend of mine, Ernie the attorney, say to me, Buck, you shouldn't get up there and tell those people. You're supposed to tell the truth. You shouldn't tell those people that you were having a good time. He said, because I know something about your history. I know something about what happened to you. And he said, I'm going to tell you something about you. By God, you only thought you were having a good time. And I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that by God, if you think you're having a good time, you're having a good time. Because that's what a good time's all about. But it became evident to me near the end that I wasn't having a good time. I was never a social drinker. I think I was always from the beginning a drunk. I was a hail fellow, well met, happy-go-lucky, always ready for a good time, always invited out, invited back again. Met Dolly and was able to convince her in that state, nice guy and all that. A little difficult at times, but finally persuaded her. And she's stuck it out all these years now. But I was having a good. And then sometime I went over to China, flew with the Flying Tigers, had a lot of excitement over there. I liked it. That was a good war, I often say. People get mad at you and say, what a good war. That was a good war. That wasn't being there. That was a good one. I had a lot of excitement there. In fact, I have one of my top commanding officers here in the audience tonight. A great friend of mine today. Very close to General Chennault. And had this excitement, which I liked, But I don't think I was an alcoholic then, because alcohol never interfered with my duties. It would never occur to me to drink before we had a mission or anything. But once on the ground, I couldn't get enough. But that was heavy, drunken drinking. Right? And then after the war, I came back and I became an antisocial drunk. I returned to Sperry Rand. We're raising a family. I became unpredictable. If somebody's ever told you, hey, you've turned into a regular Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I call that the Jekyll and Hyde syndrome. That's late alcoholism. Now I was being invited out, but I wasn't being invited back. Because now, nobody knew what they had for the night, what the show was going to be, whether it was going to be the happy-go-lucky drunk or the mean, nasty one. But it's still, I was able to progress in business and all and go ahead, because it was still something I didn't bring into the workplace. But then, and I was against people who drank on the job. You know, there's nobody more intolerant than a drunk that's getting away with it. You know, my older brother would lose a job. My sisters would call me up. I'm one of 8. And say, you know, Bob lost that good job he got. I'd say it serves him right. Drinking on the job, he should lose it. I like a little drink myself, but I wouldn't let him do that to me. The difference was that my brother was under the eyeball of somebody, and I wasn't. I was a salesman. A salesman, I could lay in bed and call in the office. They might be suspicious, but they couldn't prove anything. I could tell them, I've got to go down to Annapolis tonight. I've got to go down to Quantico today, so I won't be in, then roll over and pass out again. So I got away with it. And when people would get fired at our organization, I quite highly approved of that. If they drank on the job, they shouldn't. Drinking was something to be restricted to the proper times. But then I was drinking on the job, and that was different, because I was under pressures. And this was part of the salesman's mystique, part of our life, work, one of the tools of the trade, the 2-martini lunch. So I would drink, but very seldom, only 2 martinis, never only 2 martinis. So I had progressed in until I started creating such havoc around people who had before had seen nothing wrong with my drinking, and I was the last one to observe what they were all complaining about. My God, they hadn't known I drank for years. My boss used to send me a case of booze about every 2 weeks to the house to entertain, and now he's complaining about drinking. Dolly was complaining about drinking, and she had met me in a drinking place. And so, my goodness, what's all of this? Everybody in the world's reforming. We go out and we fight for freedom and democracy. And now they want to impose their restrictions on our fun. So, wanted to interfere with my fun. My fun had long gone. I was drinking sick, and I was drinking and alienating everything and destroying everything around me, and I didn't know it. Until, as I say, I was forced into here. And I came here, and these people, during that 6 weeks period, gave me the gift of the one requirement for membership, a desire to stop drinking. I'll tell you how it happened. I came here, and as my friend Ernie says, at the meeting, there were like 200 at the meeting, and they were divided into 2 groups, as far as I was concerned. There were 199 in one, and me in the other. And that's exactly how a lot of us feel. I thought, these are fine, upstanding people. I have no argument with them. We're in Protestant church basements regularly. That's okay with me. They are obviously churchy people who were okay. I had them in my church, and church people were very fine people. I loved them, and all that, but I didn't want to associate with them because they weren't my crowd. And I felt that I had my places to hang out, and they could have the churches. And here now I'm hanging out in the churches with them. So I didn't feel very much a part of it because, again, appearances are sometimes deceiving. And it wasn't until somebody either spilled some coffee on me or burnt me with a cigarette or something that I got talking to this guy. I said, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, that's okay. Do anything to me. I'm going through this Gethsemane. Do anything to me. I've had it anyway. What difference it makes? And this guy said, I feel the same way. And we'd get talking. And I realized, here's a man just like me. This is the kind of guy that I am. This guy's got more sense than these others. And we got pretty good. And then all of a sudden I found out that I was in a whole room full of people like me. That took a little while. One of my troubles was that, you ever try during the day, you don't want to go out and just drink alone, go to the races, get some companionship, you call your buddies up. I got to work. Well, so do I. Well, I got a family to support. So do I. Oh, my God. Can't you get away once in a while? Just tell them you're sick or something. No. Oh, for God's sake, don't be heading back. My God, Buck, we were out until 3 o'clock in the morning. I've had enough. People here, why couldn't we have gotten organized while we were drinking? We could have driven the families and the bosses and the judges into these meetings, and we could have gone out to the races. So I liked the people. I got to like them. See, I was sober, and I was able to like them and see that I liked them. And then, in spite of myself, I came to admire the people in AA, not as individuals, but as a group, and a collection of human beings who really, really cared for each other, who cared for me even though I was a stranger, who cared for everybody around them, and were doing those things that I thought were okay on Sundays. Stuff that I'd heard from 12 years of parochial schools. I'd heard it from sermons up at the love your neighbor and all, and I thought, well, that's okay for Sunday. Not completely for Sunday, because if you're parked on that parking lot out there, watch out trying to get off. They'll run you down after a mile to get off. So, but it was okay to talk about that stuff on Sunday. But here I found them talking about them in the middle of the week and on Saturdays and doing these things, because, you know, there's nothing really new here in AA. It's the wisdom of the ages, but the amazing part was how it was brought together by those two men, a doctor and a stockbroker, and the early ones, to put it into a package that we could all accept, no matter what our feelings were, that it would fit in. And here were these people actually doing these things in a practical manner instead of just talking about them. They were actually out there wasting their time on me with no chance of a reward. Oh, now, I was a nice guy. I wouldn't have been a success as a salesman, but if I did something for you, you know, your cousin is a purchasing agent down at the Navy, and I think we should do something for a guy like you. And if you were doing something for me, you thought, well, maybe Buck could help my nephew get a job at Sperry, and I thought that's how the world worked, you know. It was tit for tat and all that. You scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. But here they were doing things for me without any opportunity of a reward, asking for nothing except the desire to help me and telling me that I was helping them by them helping me, so that I wouldn't even feel under any obligation to them. And this was tremendous. And so I admired the people. Now, when you get to know, like, and then admire somebody, the next step is out of your hands. You know, you want to be like them. And I came to know, like, and admire you all, and I wanted to be like you. And how are you? You're people who say you're alcoholics and you're not drinking. In order to be like you, I had to want not to drink in order to be like you. And at that moment, I became a member of AA. I had been attending AA. I hadn't been drinking. But I became a member, because membership is a state of mind. We don't have any membership cards, but you'll know when you're a member. When I was sitting out in that audience and no longer there to quieten that priest down, or that fat boss of mine who had so much mouth, or to get things quiet at home, or because I felt sorry for this deluded so-called sponsor coming around, hauling me around. I didn't want to hurt his feelings. I was there because I wanted to be sober, and then, without realizing, I had become a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I learned a lot of things. I learned this was an illness. This was a physical disease, that you're not a moral leper. You don't lack willpower. You don't, this has nothing to do with your morals, whether they're good or bad. It has nothing to do with your willpower, whether you think you have it or not, whether you're educated or uneducated, whether you're rich or poor, powerful or weak, male or female, it makes no difference. We're people that have a physical disease known as alcoholism. That means to me that for some reason or other my body cannot handle the chemical alcohol in the way that it's supposed to, for people that apparently have no problems with it except from maybe a little bit of physical damage. But they can drink it, they can drink a lot of it, and it doesn't create sordid, miserable life situations for them. And it's not that they are better than I am, because I wasn't about to admit that anymore. It was like Dr. Silkworth said. He said, alcoholism is an allergy of the body coupled with an obsession of the mind. And I liked that, because that meant I had an allergy. You know, I had this big fat boss of mine, the vice president of Sperry, always raising Cain with me. And he had an allergy. Boy, as soon as I heard that allergy, my ears popped up. Because I remember down at the Annapolis Roads Country Club at the company picnic where he claimed I'd been such a terrible mess and all, and brought great humiliation to Sperry Rand because of my behavior. when my allergy was functioning. And there had been some ragweed or something near the head table. He was at the head table. And you know what happened? He sneezed in the soup at the head table. And you know what they said to him? God bless you. Nobody said to him, use of willpower, stop that sneezing in the soup. Show some guts. You know, and I think of that even today. I am not ashamed that I'm an alcoholic. I got an allergy to alcohol. That's what alcoholism is. I've got my allergy. That's fine. I respect theirs. I don't go to a guy that has hay fever and say, look, you lost that last job in the watch factory because you sneezed and blew all the works all over the place. Now, I've got some fine people in the watch business that are coming here to town, and you think of your family and your kids and show some guts, be a man, and come out there. We're going to have a picnic out in a field of ragweed, and don't sneeze. You know? By God, I respect their allergy, and they can respect mine. That's how I feel about it. And that's the way I felt. So I'll bring this down. Bring this down. So I heard here the disease concept. And by the way, there's a wonderful piece of AA literature, AA privilege. It's called Bill's Talks to the Medical Profession. You know, I'm always so busy, I just get around to reading it after all these years. So don't worry if you're slow on getting your reading done in here. Or just stay sober and you'll get it done. But it's a great one, you know, and I liked it because, you know, Bill had this terrific spiritual awakening. He actually had the flashing lights and the thunder, you know, and something that, don't you wait to have that before you make that 12-step call. Go out and make it. It isn't, and you know, Bill wrote, he tells us on himself, and he wrote to, and you know, Dr. Silkworth said, Bill, this is wonderful, you know, that you had and all. And he had this tremendous spiritual awakening. He found out that this is a phenomena that rarely happens. Paul on the road to Damascus had it, where he was struck off the horse, you know. It's a very rare thing, but it happens, and it's legitimate. But it's only going to happen to a few people. And Bill went out, and he was, by the way, I was telling this to a group of psychologists at the National Institute of Health some months ago. And I was telling a story, and this one psychologist, they never want you to have anything said. Finally, I had to give in. I said, what do you want? He said, Miss Doyle, what we want to explain to you that we psychologists have looked into this spiritual experience of Bill's, and we've determined it was delayed delirium tremens. You know. They're going to fix everything for us, you know. But whatever he had, it was great he had him. But anyway, he wrote, we wouldn't be sober today if it hadn't. But he wrote Dr. Jung and all about it, and they did determine that it was a great thing. But Bill was going around, this is why I met Dr. Bob, and he was talking to people, but he wasn't having any success until Dr. Silkworth called him in and said, Bill, you had that experience with, nobody wants to hear about it. They haven't had it, they're not going to have it, and they don't want to hear about it, and they're laughing down their sleeve at you and behind your back. And he says, Bill, you've turned into a preacher. He says, go back out there and tell them about the physical disease, what alcohol is doing to their bodies and brains. And he said, let them have their own spiritual experience. And I believe my spiritual experience came in a very innocuous way when I really admitted that the great Buck Doyle might be powerless over alcohol. That was a spiritual awakening to me because I was convinced otherwise, and just like the things you've convinced me with would take a sledgehammer to change, it took almost a sledgehammer or worse to change my conviction that I was a social drinker. I'm a slow learner. I'm a slow learner. Maybe you're like me. That's why that first drink, I could stick my head out a window to see if it was raining. And a brick would come and hit me. And I'd say, by God, this hotel could get sued having loose bricks for people to stick their head out to see whether it's raining. I wonder where it came from, because I'm going to tell the manager, and so I'd stick my head out there again, and another brick would hit me. And I'd say, by God, that's a coincidence. So I stick my head out again, and I get hit by another brick, and now I got the message. Somebody's out there throwing bricks at me. And that's how I was with my drinking. Always this time, that was a coincidence. That's how it happened. But it happened. I found it here, the answer, because you people told me of the physical and mental damage that this alcohol will do to a person if they happen to be what we call ourselves an alcoholic. Doctors won't tell you that. Doctors get sober here. This is where doctors come and get sober. Well, most doctors don't know a darn thing about this, and I don't mean to be critical of them. They're the first to admit it. I was at the hearings, at the Senate hearings of Senator Hughes, and they had the head of the AMA there. That's the Pope of the doctors. He told them, he said, gentlemen, he said, this is a number 3 killer in this country. I think it's number 1, really. You take all the things, and the other people that die from those other 2 diseases because they don't recognize any symptoms, because we feel bad. We feel bad when we feel good. We just feel bad all the time, so why check anything up? So your doctor, he sees you drive up in a big car, the family comes in all shined up, and they're in a nice place, and you're there, and you give him a check, and it doesn't bounce, and you're a nice person. You don't look like an alcoholic to him, because he's just another human being, and alcoholics are skinny, and you're not skinny. You're fat. And you got a lot of, alcoholics have a lot of slack in the seat of their pants, like their backside was shot out in the wall. That's not you. But you quit paying your bill, and he'll start checking that over again. All depends on who's looking at you. My doctor said to me, he said, Buck, you couldn't be an alcoholic. Not you. You come from too good a stock. He was my uncle. Naturally, we don't have him in the family. Oh. My friend Ed, I shared him with the psychiatrist. Ed was very prominent, very successful, world famous. And he'd come to AA and he'd be happy. And he'd whistle. He hummed enough to drive you crazy. I had him at my house. He'd read the paper. He'd humming all the time. So my daughters, respecting his anonymity, used to say, oh, I see we got Mr. Hummer back. Then I shared him with the psychiatrist. Go back to psychiatrists. Now, I know there's a lot of enlightened psychiatrists, and thank God they're getting more enlightened thanks to a lot of our efforts here. But anyway, this psychiatrist was unenlightened. But he told Ed, he says, Ed, a man of your prominence and success and character and ability, you couldn't be an alcoholic, not you. He says, what? We've got to find out. There's some underlying thing, possibly the fact that your mother wore polka dot bloomers in your formative ages, and we'll eliminate that. And Ed would be drunk, because he wasn't an alcoholic. And then he'd come back, and this was one night, I got a call from the psychiatrist. He said, Buck, I need your help. I thought, boy, I got one now. What can I do for you, doctor? He said, it's not for me. He said, Buck, I want your help to get Ed into St. Elizabeth's Hospital. That's our loony bin. St. Elizabeth's Hospital on a voluntary commitment. I said, well, what do you call me for at this time? I said, call some of your buddies that you went to school with. They're all on the staff over there. They know you. They'll put him in. No, he says, this is an emergency, and we've got to get quick action. You alcoholics are cunning, baffling, and powerful. And he said, we want to get Ed right in there. He said, it's an emergency. He said, Ed has gone into an alcoholic psychosis. When I hung up, Dolly asked me what an alcoholic psychosis was, and I explained to her that meant Ed had gone broke. So it all depends on who's looking at you at that moment in time, see? What'll happen? So, we come to the end. We should say how it's like, but it's been so wonderful, and this is just an example of it, being with you people this weekend, and just one of the many rewards. This has been, I'll tell you this to the new person, believe this, we people here are not anything like the idea that we're afraid of life, hiding from it. I think most of us had a zest for living, and didn't know how to accomplish it, but we wanted action, we wanted excitement, we wanted adventure, and these are great parts of living. We warned him. As I say, I enjoyed being over in China with the 14th Air Force because it was excitement, and I dreaded this approach to this program. I can remember I said, yes, you'll stay sober. They've got a pretty good rep for their product. That must not be bad. But boy, Dullsville, here comes another citizen. It's going to be dull. What do you do, you know? What are you going to do with all that time that you're going to have on your hands? You know, when you don't have to run out to the parking lot and get that slug out of the trunk, and you don't have to spend an hour with a hopper in the morning or something. You know, you're going to have, what's going to be the fun anymore, you know? But believe me, we have an exciting life here. This has been one of the most adventurous and exciting parts of my life, if not the most. It's always been with these people here, sharing in their adventures and everything, and hearing their experiences. It's been so wonderful, and it's been so rewarding, because just naturally not drinking, you have to feel better, even or not. You know, in fact, one guy was saying a very short while ago at an anniversary, he says, you know, so if you're wondering whether you're an alcoholic, don't worry, that may never go away. He said, he was celebrating his 5th anniversary. He says, you know, I wonder, he said, I've often thought, I wonder whether I really am an alcoholic or not. He said, you know, celebrating my 5th anniversary, maybe I made a mistake 5 years ago. He said, by God, if I made a mistake, it's the best damn mistake I ever made. But don't worry about it. Just come here and find out what we're talking about. Learn the language. The language that it talks about up there. What we're talking about. We speak a different language. You can be in a restaurant in the middle of Tennessee and see a couple of guys and talking, and the way they look, you know damn well you're looking at a couple of AA members over there. Tell the way they're looking and talking. It's funny. There's something magic in here. We speak a different conversation, but you've got to come here long enough to learn the language. One guy said it takes you about 6 weeks to learn the language, because we talk crazy. We talk about keeping something by giving it away. We talk about winning by giving up. You know, I mean, we say, oh, what's bad is good. What's good is bad. You know, we'll confuse you, but you've got to come here and get this thing all unraveled for a while. But you might definitely have feelings that this would be good for the simple folks, because it's a very simple program. And you're highly educated. You have PhDs, everything else after your name. You're an intellectual, and it's a simple program, and you're glad it's for simple people. But you don't think it's due for you. And I submit to you, make one decision. Decide whether you want to be a drunk or a sober intellectual. That's all you got to worry about. And if you want to be, then check all your thoughts about drinking, that part of your brain, your drinking part of the brain, check it at the door and come in here and just sit like a little child, like the Bible says, and you'll become a sober intellectual. And then we have some people that say, yes, but there's a lot of this God business here, and I'm a little frightened of it. There's a spiritual program, and I don't know for sure whether or not there is a God. I'm a man of study and all, but I haven't determined yet, to my satisfaction. I'm an agnostic. You know, we have a chapter to the agnostic. We want you here. Come on in. Join us, you know, become part of the deal. All you have to decide is whether you want to be a drunk or a sober agnostic. That's the problem. Then I know among my friends people who say, well, wait, I'm not an agnostic. I know there's no God, but, and I don't want to be a phony. Well, that's a euphemism for alcoholism sometimes, you know. It's about the same. It's awfully hard not to be a phony and be an alcoholic. Well, I don't want to be, well, you don't want to be an alcoholic, don't want to be a phony? Okay, that's the package. I don't believe in God, he says. Look, we don't care about that garbage. You either decide whether you want to be a drunk or a sober atheist. If you want to be a sober atheist, you come to these meetings, and by God, you'll be a sober atheist. But let me leave this message for the Sunday morning. For the atheist, if you really feel you're an atheist, not criticizing, but you know, if you really believe you're an atheist, you need this program more than I do. You know why? Because actually, theoretically, I could go out here in Virginia Beach and start drinking. See? I believe in God, and I believe in a hereafter, along with it, package. So I could actually go out here in Virginia Beach, throw back everything, all the great things you've done, spit in your face about the whole thing, become my own natural, nasty, alcoholic self. And then just as my liver's about to explode, I can call in one of my priest friends in AA, and he can give me the blessing. And you know what happens to me? I pop right through the pearly gates, and I've got a whole new life coming up for me. But you know, you the atheist, you're not going anywhere. This is the last scene of the last act for you. So for your sake, come in and get sober. Thank you all. God bless you.